Thank you, Mr. President. Friends, I rise with a heavy heart because this is a heavy subject. Sometime in 2008, my employer began the process of determining whether we could sustain our employment level. Months and many prayers, Senator from the 36th, went by before we reached the conclusion that the jobs we had could not be sustained without reducing a number. I missed a lot of sleep. Don't care to tell you I was sick in my restroom, because it is real. They are families. They are people we love. I have stood in front of a room of people that I loved and told them, "You haven't done anything wrong, but your job is gone. There's not enough business to sustain it, and we jeopardize everyone else's job if we try to save yours at this point." It is the worst thing I've ever done. I stood in the human resources office at my employer when a young, bright, talented Hispanic man came to me and said, "I wasn't on the list, but if I'm close, I'd like to volunteer because I'm young, and this coworker of mine has a family." It's real. They are families. And that is the heart of Georgia. There are many quotes from the sacred scriptures, and the senator from the 36 gave us one. There's also another. Neither a borrower nor a lender be. And we have a great debt. We accumulated that debt through our own foolishness as a state. Governor Barnes came up with the idea, respectfully, Senator from the 36th. I was a member of many business organizations in that day and age, and none, to my knowledge, advocated or lobbied for this holiday. It was a fool's errand. We wasted money. We did not collect what we should have collected. And that is our fault. We turned off the circuit breakers as we saw the fund go down, and that is our fault. And today, we have a crisis in our fund. We have a crisis that ultimately jeopardizes the long-term sustainability of employment in our state, and that is a fact. And while others would say wait, while others would say bury your head in the sand with all these amendments, I say I'll stand, because the people of my district sent me here to stand. I promise you I know folks who are unemployed. I have one of the highest unemployment rates in the state of Georgia, and it weighs on me. If it were true that unemployment checks stimulated local economies, we'd be doing great in northwest Georgia. We've cashed a lot. But it's not true. Every single penny in the fund comes from employers. And without employers and employment, we will have no money in the fund, and it doesn't matter how many unemployment checks you cash. If you don't have a job to sustain it, you lose the whole thing. This is difficult. Make no mistake about it. Make no mistake about it. It is worth noting, for clarity's sake, that this affects new claims, not existing claims. So we're not taking away a check is not disappearing that is currently coming to anyone under the fund. It is worth noting that while the waiting period is an estimated 2 to 3 weeks for a new check, usually if you work with your Human Resources Department, it doesn't take quite that long because you can encourage the Department of Labor to be a little more efficient. We're not adding a week when we talk about a waiting week to that process. That's an administrative issue. That is not an additional week waiting for a check. We have a train moving down the tracks. It is the FUTA assessment that the federal law dictates. And in 2015, it'll take $240 million in just that tax alone from our state. Our unemployment rate will definitely be impacted by that. The senator from I believe the 41st, asked that we hold those who labor in higher regard, and we talked about veterans. Well, Senator, I will assure you, and members of the Senate, I will assure you, that outside my family and my faith, I have been raised to do nothing but care first for those that labor in our business. I love them personally. And there's a great story of a landowner who donated money to a local parish. And on the transition of the deed, he grabbed up his oldest son and threw him in a lake. And somebody said, "Why did you do that?" He said, "Because he's a young man, and I want him to remember this day." We shouldn't have done the holiday. We shouldn't have taken off the circuit breaker. Members of the Senate, you've met my two sons. I ought to go home today and throw them in the lake. If you ever hear in Georgia a suggestion that we should do likewise in the future, remember this day. This should hurt. It will hurt. But it is responsible. It is what adults do. It is what we were sent here to do. We have a debt. It must be repaid. We are placing the burden more heavily on the employment community, and we are placing a burden on those who have lost their job. That is true. We don't live in a world where we don't pay our debts in Georgia. That's the message I can go home with, and I will continue to love those who suffer and struggle in my community, and I hope you will too. I ask that you would support Amendment 1 as it clarifies the effective date. I ask that you would not bury your heads in the sand, that you would vote down the rest of the amendments, that you would not table and put off to another day what should and could be done today. I ask that you pass the bill. And if the House wants to take up this matter and say it's theirs first, that'll be fine, but we will stand and we will address the issue of the day, and we will take action with a plan that is responsible and adult. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.